Good morning, everybody. Hey, Shiva, how are you?
Very good, Andrew.
Good, good. Tim, did I see Tim for? Yeah, Tim. Father
Andrew?
Tim. How are you, man?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Welcome, everybody. Andrew Morgan here, helping the CyberCNS team on the go-to-market. We'll get started at 3 past. We usually give it a little bit of extra time as it takes just some time for everybody to get in. So hope everybody is having a great week. Steve, good to see you. Pollock, going through the list here. Garrett Lynch. Garrett, how are you? Getting warmer in Chicago? Or Illinois area? Carl.
Hey. Good morning, Andrew.
Hey, Garrett. Morning.
Hey, guys.
Andrew.
Hey. How is everybody?
Doing well on our end. We're actually warm for a change. So it's actually 60s and, we're not as miserable in Chicago.
Oh, we can make up for the misery. Don't worry.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great to see y'all.
Great to see you guys. Oops, excuse me.
You were definitely born in Chicago, whatever that was.
What's that, Steve?
It's the way he said Chicago. Chicago.
Hey, you got a Chicago, a little bit of get your hot dogs and your Italian beef.
Awesome.
My mother calls it Chicago, and I'm like, where did you find the R?
Well, that's like me saying coffee. I'm from New York originally. People are like, coffee. It's coffee. But Long Island, you say coffee. All right, let me start things up.
Extra dip on in there.
Carl, you're sounding a little tinny. It's all right. All right, let's get started here. Welcome everybody to the CyberCNS partner call. I'm Andrew Morgan. These partner calls, if you're new, we've been doing them for, gosh, Shiva, May will be 2 years. Can you believe it? 2 years from Alpha Code. Remember that, Carl? Tim?
Oh, yes, I remember Alpha Code. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so we've come a long way. Yeah. So we've come just a little ways. And the partner call is, if you're new to it, a lot of you guys have been on it, but the partner call is pretty straightforward in that Shiva, the CTO and founder, comes on momentarily, goes through what's new in the application, what is coming. I'll monitor chat, interrupt Shiva at appropriate times. And then we'll just open it up for general Q&A. I did have one question. Shiva kindly prodded me. I had a request from a friend, quote unquote, a bit company that's in the channel from CyberCNS. And I said, Shiva, wouldn't it be great to do this? He said, Andrew, you got to ask the partners if they want it or not. So in light of how Shiva likes to do things, which I agree with wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I want to kind of throw something out to you guys, and yes is fine.
Again?
Can you mute whoever that is, Shiva?
On where?
Thanks. So
Classic.
Yeah. So let me just share my screen briefly, and I'll explain this in about 60 seconds, and then just in chat, give a yes or no. Are you guys familiar with Cyberfish, formerly Cofense? Yeah, to a degree. Carl, I think you are, right?
Yeah. That's our boy Amit, right?
Amit, yes. Okay.
Amit,
So
yeah,
real quick, the idea is, would you like them to come on next week around quarter to the top of the hour? So main thing will still be full CyberCNS partner call. They are introducing, they have a protection product, like, so if you have a SEG or you're used to a Mimecast or Proofpoint, they compete head to head in that market. Multi-tenanted, they've been doing a great job, have a ton of MSPs on it. They've released simulation, and now they're releasing security awareness training all in one platform. Simulation and training are free. So as an MSP, you are going to be able to consolidate vendors, one solution, etc. They're looking for a group of beta partners. You get it all. Like I said, the only, you're going to be able to use it for 60 days at no charge, by the way, and try it all out. So if you guys could just give me a yes or no, if you want me to bring them on so that you guys can see what it's about, etc., or no, you guys let us know, and we'll go based on the predominant feedback. Okay, so looks like predominantly yeses. All right, so with that, Shiva, let you take on over and bring us all up to date, if you would.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
So, going over basically this week's update. So I've talked of like a couple of weeks back, we talked about the architecture walkthrough and deployment review that IBM did. So essentially, they kind of have given us a go ahead with the entire architecture and the deployment process that we're putting together. And basically, with Palo Alto doing a secure code review, they haven't found anything which basically is problematic from a code review perspective, but basically from process perspective, they wanted us to deploy everything using, basically, as I pointed out last time, that we wanted to add SonarQube to the CI/CD pipeline. For those who are familiar with SonarQube, SonarQube has basically a set of rules that it essentially applies on a piece of source code that you can choose to either add or remove from those set of rules. So they've given us basically a standard set of rules that is essentially required for secure code, and basically we are essentially have put that into the CI/CD pipeline. So we did stage one, which basically we passed through and was not a problem. Now they've given us basically stage two, which they want us to complete, and that's where basically we are fixing up a few things which basically they want us to basically close out on it. And a lot of this is because one of the things that we are doing ourselves is basically kind of putting ourselves into this particular sequence more because, like, I've had a lot of partners basically kind of talk to us in the last 2 weeks saying that how do you prevent yourself from being part of a supply chain attack and all of those questions that keep getting asked. And so what we have decided to do, if you remember, like a month back when we had this whole issue of certificate revocation, etc., and how do we essentially go through that entire process. So that essentially put us into this loop where we wanted to basically make sure that while we basically understand that it's a little frustrating that a lot of things are not getting done, but at least basically we want to make sure that from a security perspective, you will not find us lacking, and at least we put all into it, everything into it to basically kind of make sure that it is at least whatever we can do from our side to basically give you the confidence that everything is secure, we will basically do those pieces. So that is what we basically worked on, and it's taken a lot of time because it takes a lot of time to basically coordinate with these folks and going through the whole thing. In the meanwhile, basically, if you remember, we basically said we'll go live with the infrastructure, but as we are basically putting this together, we are basically in the process of the infrastructure. But what we've done is that, so I basically sat down for a huddle with the team and said, if we are essentially going to kind of keep doing these assessments, etc., then we are never going to basically give the partner a better experience, and then everybody's going to get upset with us. So what we essentially did was, during this period, so if you remember the architecture that we put together, right? So we basically are migrating from a single node Elastic search, which we all had, to basically a larger cluster. and each of you having a tenant, right? So what we are right now have done is we've basically taken snapshots of all your tenants and moved your data into the central cluster. And the incremental plus snapshot will essentially be done over this weekend, and that will be the final migration. So then what will essentially happen is that all the hosted SaaS instances will essentially start using the Elasticsearch cluster from this weekend itself. So what will be left in order to basically migrate is only essentially the microservices that are already running on those servers into the shared Kubernetes, so that we essentially have the isolated tenant architecture. So this weekend, we basically already would have all your data basically migrated. We would have all your authentication, which is your key cloak, migrated. So with that, we will have a system which is essentially functioning using your existing domain and servers, but basically using the shared infrastructure. And then the next part should go very quickly the moment we essentially get approval from the whole SonarQube pipeline process of it. So because that once that happens, we'll be sending out. We're also working on updating the documentation and the verification process, because we recognize that our documentation is basically one of our biggest weaknesses. So we're working on that documentation, and especially with the new single portal experience, it becomes more important for all the documentation to be right. So that's essentially what we've been working on. And again, we basically have moved all of the data over. So we are confident that that other migration will not take much of time. So this interim release, basically, we are just waiting for some final SonarQube reports to come out, and then we will basically push it. But I just wanted to very quickly show you basically something which is there in our, so in the actual portal. So I'm just going to quickly log in because. So if we go to the standard reports, basically in the basically compliance reports, there's a whole bunch of compliance reports that have been added. And one of them essentially is the Cyber Essentials report. So you can basically download this report. This report basically we created a little bit differently. And I wanted to just get feedback from all of you saying that, is this how you would like all the other reports to be migrated to, or is this not the one? So what we found with Cyber Essentials is that they have these questions, the complete questionnaire, right? So unlike in the previous case, we did not essentially pick up just some sections and throw it in the UI, but rather basically went back to the actual template. So you can see that it automatically fills up, saying that this is the question set, this is basically the company name, when was it run, all of those details. Now, whatever it basically cannot fill, it essentially kind of creates it in this color, where it basically marks this out. Now, these are all basically questions like how many staff are home workers, what is your website address, etc. So it does not basically fill it, but we can provide a template to fill up some of those details. But then when you basically go to this things such as please list the quantities of laptops, desktops, and virtual desktops, etc. Right? So what it does is it basically automatically fills this up, right? And sorry, you can essentially see that it basically creates a link. Now, this link is nothing but a sheet in this table, which basically has the details of all the items, right? Which basically correspond to that particular question. Similarly, like for example, what are the thin clients? So list the quantity of servers, virtual hosts. You must include operating systems. So you click on this, you get basically all the virtual hosts. So all the VMware or basically anything. And where is it running on? What is the OS name? What is the OS version? All of these details basically are filled up in this. So it kind of goes and fills up everything. So if you can look at this, like what is the quantity of tablets? It basically identifies those. What are the networks which are in scope? So you click on this, it tells you what are the networks that have been assessed, which is basically in there, right? So kind of filling up the entire sections, which essentially will allow you to basically kind of take this, download this template. Once you download this template, you know that these questions already, the evidence is there. So you can look at your compliance or non-compliance level. And the next one is basically whatever is basically marked in this color, you have to essentially fill it on your own. So this is basically the model that we've taken for Cyber Essentials Plus to basically provide this to people, so that it becomes easy for you to enter it and you can essentially kind of get be done with it. And the same data is used for basically populating dashboards that we have, which essentially is what we thought will be useful. So I'm open to feedback, basically saying that would you like it this way, or you want it in the old format that we essentially had, or a combination of the two. Basically, we are open to any suggestions on that particular piece. Now, the second thing that we are releasing very shortly, which basically I wanted to kind of quickly show, because this was given to us a short while ago by one of this thing, is the CIS and how it should be represented. So this is essentially the CIS representation that is basically going to be implemented going forward. So when you basically get the CIS assessment controls, today we just basically put a dump of all the items which are in there in CIS and basically leave it at that. So essentially what we are doing right now is that we are separating it out into the different implementation groups. And for each one of these, what we are doing is, based on the sub policies which are in there, based on the values, we are essentially kind of putting your policy status and the implementation status. This is basically what we're going to do. So this way, what you will be able to see is that what is the overall risk, what is the breakdown by different implementation groups, and based on what is getting filled over here, automatically over here, you will essentially know, because especially in CIS, the implementation group 1, group 2, group 3 are 3 different groups. They are 3 different sets, and depending on basically how many, like you can complete, if you finish IG1 completely, that's when you can go to IG2. So essentially you need 100% compliance in IG1 in order to basically go for IG2. So your level of compliance in this will essentially be measured. And so you know at which level you are in every single company. So this is essentially the format in which we've been kind of got a consultant, and they asked us to kind of do it this way. So while our consultants may say XYZ, but I just wanted to get feedback from this team whether we can go ahead and implement this, because I know that for a long time everybody has been asking for this implementation group based breakdown for different things. And again, we're going to first implement this for Office 365, because I think that's basically going to be the fastest thing that we can essentially implement. And then for other assets basically within the organization. That's essentially the plan that we have right now to quickly get this onboarded. But I would like to understand if folks like this, don't like it, and if there are any suggestions on how we should basically proceed with this.
So people like it, Shiva, based on chat. Anybody want to come in and that may be using it today and give any type of feedback?
Do it, Steve Pollock. What happens if you have a control you can't implement or don't want to implement?
It's Steve, you're fading in and out. We heard what happens if you have a control and then it came back.
What if you have a control that you don't want to implement there, or that can't be implemented, and therefore, never mind. Let's see, non-funded parts policy. So if you have something that you can't, not implemented because you can't, there's always not applicables or.
So what would you like to see, Steve, in that particular case? Should we essentially put basically a explanation field so that you can enter an explanation as to why it's not implemented?
Correct, and then you're accepting the risk. So when you show it, you have a complete report with the deficiencies shown, as opposed to just not implemented.
Yeah, this is Ned. I think a place to put notes, explanations would be the missing piece here, because again, you are going to have. So I think this is a good format for the IG controls. I think the other one for Cyber Essentials is better. For Cyber Essentials is a different approach because it is a certification standard. We are still a certification body for Cyber Essentials, but we are not currently doing any Cyber Essentials certifications. But it is a different approach because it's sort of asked these questions. So I think you do need two different formats. And I think you've gotten pretty good start on the right formats here.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay, so if basically we've got consensus on that, then I would like to essentially kind of, we will basically take this back and get this released as quickly as possible, because I think we are in good shape to basically release these pieces, because we have all the data and it is only a question of basically putting this into IG. But Cyber Essentials, the template, we've already filled that out, and we can essentially, you can actually download that. So that once we push, once we have the security controls cleared up, we basically should be able to push it to everybody's instance.
Is that it, Shiv?
Yep.
Okay. Shiva, should we talk a little bit about people maybe patching? Is it, maybe just kind of get a sense who's using patching, how's it going, anything like that. Do you have a sense, Shiva, of how many people have accepted EULAs and are using it?
We've seen approximately around, I think, 15 to 20 partners who basically have used the patching.
Okay.
There are basically most of them seem to be using it for browsers, and it seems to be working fine for that. There were basically a few tickets on certain patches, this thing. So with whoever basically, whenever there were basically specific issues in terms of why it was not upgrading a particular piece of third-party software, we could basically resolve those. So in certain cases, if it did not happen, we basically would be happy to basically get in and kind of look at it and figure out like why it did not happen. But I think we basically have, we will basically be working with the different teams to essentially kind of get their feedback on patching, because I've seen the multiple tickets. We just want to kind of get through this upgrade. Once this upgrade is done, we will basically be kind of going behind all of the anything that see whether patching is functioning exactly as per spec, or it is not doing what it does.
Got it. So Craig, have you put in a ticket on your issue? Did not. Okay. Is there any chance you could?
No, I'll get Rishali on our side to create a ticket, and I'll follow up with Craig. That's not a problem.
Okay. Get this arrow, smooth ticket. Thanks, James. We are getting
So-
success. Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
So maybe this just affects us, but the links for the patching have disappeared over the last day or two. And the EULA is accepted. I tried toggling the EULA off and back on. I'm still not seeing. I was assuming that maybe there was some issue that they've been pulled back. Maybe it's something that's only affecting us.
I will check, Dennis. I will basically check whether anything basically was specific to your instance, but we didn't pull it back out. I think basically specifically to your instance, maybe when the UL are recorded or something like that, it basically kind of got overwritten. I will basically get that checked out.
Okay.
All right. Take a look in here, Shiva. Okay.
We are getting
Just gonna
successful patches. Actually, Katie, when she says that we're getting successful patches in the logs, but the assets are not dropping off the remediation tab. Typically, this happens with especially things like browsers, because unless browsers are launched once, they basically don't upgrade themselves. So that's basically one of the things that we've seen, and we have replied back in a couple of tickets. But so otherwise, basically, yes, it does do the upgrades, and because the underlying engine basically which we're using is a chocolatey engine. So it does do the upgrades, but what we've typically seen is that, especially with browsers, you have to basically relaunch the browser, only then it does the upgrade. And I just noticed this today that even Office is doing the same thing now. So Office, you cannot upgrade it inline. So what happens is that you install the patch, it does not do anything. And then the next time you launch Word or Excel, it takes a full 5 minutes saying that applying the upgrade at this point of time.
Shiva, I think it's Mitchell. Did I have that right? I know we haven't spoken in a while. And Matter. Mitchell? Is it? I'm trying to remember. Yep. Okay, cool. He says we'll be able to patch, schedule patches from the global view, Shiv. I can send patch jobs from individual client remediation plans, but it does not show global remediation. Wasn't sure.
So if everybody thinks that it's a good idea that we put it in the global remediation plan, we are happy to, because for us, it basically makes no difference. The only thing is that then we'll have to break it up into multiple jobs on a per company basis. And we can basically create a consolidated job status, because just that each company's job will essentially be a separate job, right? So you can't put that in a global job as such. And then we'll basically create one consolidated job ID, which shows the status of each company. So if that is something that everybody thinks is good, I'm happy to basically get that implemented.
Okay, any feedback there? Yes on the global? Getting a lot of questions, but no feedback. One second, Shiva. Let's see if we have any yeses or no's on global. No, no one cares. I'm being facetious. Good.
I'm gonna go back to my question. Actually, I just realized that we have upgraded the implementation such that you do have to approve per company, which I didn't realize that had been added. So I think my issue is I haven't gone into each company. I've accepted the EULA globally, but not for some of the companies, because I see that some companies do have it there. So I think that's on my end. I've been really busy the last week or so. I just didn't realize that that had been added. So that's a great feature. One of the things I was looking for was being able to implement it on a company by company basis.
Yep, Dennis, you told us, I think a couple of weeks back. So as soon as we got it, we basically implemented it. Because
perfect.
Shiva, since we're talking, I'll go to the questions in a moment. Shiva, since we're talking patching, I have a question. I've gotten on calls from prospects and partners. The question is, you're looking at a compliance report, and it says you're quote unquote not compliant because you're not using Windows patching, but they're using a third-party patching tool. How do they, basically update that to say, well, we are doing this control, we're just not doing it in the way that you're looking at it? Does it make sense?
yeah, it makes sense. So just as we're doing with EDRs and with this thing, what I think we have to do is to basically find out all of the different patch managers that people possibly use. And if that is installed, we'll essentially kind of mark that as compliant, because we would essentially say that although you're not using Windows patches, you're using this particular tool to do the patching. And if you find those agents on those machines, then it should be okay. It's a form of application whitelisting. That's all we basically need to do. So I'm happy to basically, if we have a list of patching applications that folks are using, then I'm happy to basically kind of, for especially Windows patches and application patches, then I can basically put that list. We can figure out if those agents are running on the machine. And if it is running on the machine, we'll mark it as compliant.
Yeah, like Frank, either Ian or Frank just said.
Yeah, it's Ian here.
Ian. But like Shiva, like right now, obviously most MSPs are going to use an RMM. Most, not all, but most. Is it like we just get, all the RMMs to that we can fingerprint then?
Yeah, we can. That is the easy part of it. But if they're using some other patching solution like Altris or something of that order, then basically we need to just that when we basically put it in the compliance and say this is the reason for why we think you're compliant, we want to make sure that it's the right reason, right? Because tomorrow nobody in the audit should pull up saying that I had automate, but I never use it for Windows patching, and it still said that I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I just have a real quick question about, so what you're talking about with the patching is cool. But we've also seen NPCAP OEM installed on, anywhere there's a lightweight agent or probe. And we're also still dealing with, probes and agents going offline. We're a Sophos shop, so I'm not sure that we have all the right bells and whistles, whitelists in place for keeping these probes and agents online. We've noticed that at some shops that we manage that run WebRoot or Carbon Black, we haven't seen any issue, but my finger is now kind of on the Sophos trigger. And I'm just wondering, where are all of the things with regards to what we need to whitelist for potentially keeping these things from going offline?
So here is what I will do. Carl, you're also a fully Sophos shop, right?
We are, yeah, and we have not had that issue in a while. I remember initially, a couple of years ago we did. So I don't even remember exactly where that landed. I know that it's possible, and definitely if your Sophos is not set up to do this, it absolutely can stop your CyberCNS agents from functioning, as I would think any good endpoint protection would. So I don't exactly remember the steps of where that's at. I think we asked you folks and you helped us out,
Yeah, so what I would say is that, like, if you can send me basically what is your Sophos device that you're using, what I will do is that I will internally purchase that device. We'll set it up in the lab and then basically get all the settings and then send it over to you. We will basically do this this week. If you can just give me the device.
Is this the firewall
yeah.
blocking it, or is this the EDR software?
That's the challenge, guys, is that I'm not sure at what point it is now, because is it the firewall interacting with the EDR,
You have to do both. You have to do both.
Yeah. So Shiva, I will get you the common Sophos device that we use, and then also the type of EDR software, this EDR Sophos software, and I'll send you the whitelist rules that we currently have in place.
Yep.
I have kept a thread with you guys, just about probes going offline. I've been having to kick probes, just restarting them. And what's also another thing that's going on, Shiva, and I don't know, I sent you guys a video of filtering. When I go to look at the global lightweight agents and probes, when I try to sort by online or offline, it just doesn't work. It's not working the way I would expect it. So I'm having a hard time lining up data between the CyberCNS product versus my RMM tool. Like, is this machine offline really, in one place, or is it that the agent has gone offline? That sort of disconnect because of the filtering that's just not working in CyberCNS currently. So that's also another thing that's going on. That's also a challenge as well. So it sounds like I have a to-do list of getting you guys the make and model of the common Sophos device, the EDR software, and the whitelist rules that we have in place. But also, there's just a lingering issue if you guys go into global settings, you go into probes, agents, lightweight agents, and you try to put in any sort of filtering with regards to online, offline, it's just not working.
So what I'll do is that the online offline thing, by tonight, I'll basically sit with the team to basically figure out why this problem is occurring for you, because when I spoke to the team, they said they are not seeing the problems. They basically tried it multiple times. So I will basically root cause this and get back with an answer tonight for you, Ian. On the other part, which is once you send me the Sophos make and model, I'll set up the lab. And that will probably happen on Tuesday because I travel back only on Monday from Qatar here. So as soon as I land in Bangalore, I'll set up the lab and then I will basically get back to you with a response by Tuesday next week. But the
Awesome.
UI issue they're
appreciate
talking
it.
about, I will basically get with the team tonight and basically resolve it.
I appreciate
Shiva,
that.
if there-
I'm just
Sorry, I was
curious.
just gonna say-
Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. I was just gonna say, if there's a question about the Sophos side of it, since we're, a full, fully deployed XG and Sophos EDR shop, and have been doing that for a while. If there's a question, we can involve Chuck or Jared from my team in that, who actually would know those settings on our end. If you want to compare or ask a question, feel free to reach out to us, Shiva and team.
Awesome. Thank you.
Shiva, this is Steve Pollock. We're seeing agents go offline as well. And we have to stop the task, restart the service, and it's fine. Comes right back. It's not firewall or anything. It just stops reporting in. And then it starts again.
Yeah, the other challenge that I have is that the service goes what I call out to lunch. Like, with my RMM tool, I would actually be able to detect stopped service, if the service was actually stopped, and forcibly restart it. But I can't do that because it's like the service just completely goes unresponsive, where you actually have to kill the task, stop the service, restart the service.
That's
which
what
is
I
also
do.
a
That's-
challenge. Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
Yep.
Is this something that only is effective for using Intercept X, or is it the other, also a problem with the other Sophos tools?
They don't really have the other tools in motion anymore, Dennis. It's really Intercept X and its various license features going forward. That the old school stuff has been kind of out of cycle for a couple of years now.
Oh, so it's all Intercept X. Okay, I don't use Sophos, so I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah. So
yep.
my fingers, I've kind of got my finger on, this might be a Sophos problem. I'm hoping it's a Sophos problem, that we're missing something. If Dennis, you're saying that you've been able to sort through it, that would be awesome to figure this final piece out. But having these agents go offline and online, it's like, do I go deploy Pies? Do I go deploy Linux? A Linux instance of the probes? But then what do I still do with the lightweight agents, going offline as well? So Shiva, I have my marching orders. I will get you, what our common stuff is here, and get you the rules that we're currently using and all that kind of stuff as well. I appreciate that, guys. Thanks for all your help.
Yeah, Ian, in fact, when we basically put that debug on your systems and we basically ran it and basically you sent us the logs, right? What we noticed was that there were no errors at all. It was basically fully functioning. And all of a sudden, it was almost like the program was stopped, like it was kind of not allowed to proceed, like at one instruction. So
Right.
that's what we were kind of trying to figure out, why that happened. And that's, I think, one of the reasons. And basically, I think that was essentially a call it was making down to the Windows subsystem layer. And since that call did not return, what happens is that you basically are in stuck state, because you cannot basically, once it basically goes to the Windows kernel, there is no way to basically cancel that request. That's only in the user space that you can cancel the request. So I think that's where the problem is. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is to basically see all of these calls. We'll wrap it in a timeout setup where we'll basically kind of kill the process automatically in case any of these calls get stuck. So that's something that we will
That's awesome.
Put together.
Awesome. Yeah. And like I said, the other question that I had was the NP cap. I saw installed everywhere. Is that something that's going to be done going forward?
See, we upgraded to the newer version of Nmap, and what they did was they bundled the NP cap along with it. So we have right now basically put together a script to basically remove the NP cap on all lightweight agents. So it will remove
Okay.
the NP cap on all the lightweight agents, but probes will continue to have it because we want to essentially pick up all the MAC addresses of all the local IP addresses. So we'll still have NP cap only on the probe. We'll not have it on any of the lightweight agents.
Gotcha. At this point, I still see it installed. So I guess at this version 2.0.36, I still see the NP cap, but so maybe the next version, it'll start
37
removing
will
those.
remove it in case it takes place in the
Gotcha.
lightweight agent.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Yeah. Then awesome. Thanks you guys for all your help. I'm gonna mute myself. I think I have, like I said, I think I have all my marching orders to get this all happy. Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Chip,
there
this
was
is
a
Steve
question.
Pollock.
Go ahead.
You know, we're still seeing this situation where we have the cyber utilities just creating 20 or 30 or 40 sub processes to the CyberCNS agent. And it goes fine.
Is it any specific type of machine, Steve, where you see this? Because we try to keep reproducing this, but somehow we are not successful. Is it like some specific OS where you see this happening more frequently, or is it generically across all machines you see this?
I thought it was fixed some time ago, and actually I just looked at a couple of our probes are offline, and I went to look, and only one of them is having that issue. It's a 2016 server.
Okay, and this is basically the latest version.
It was actually 2033.
Oh, because you should be at 2036, right?
Yeah, this one did not. It stopped at the last. So I'll upgrade it and see if it does that, and I'll take it offline with support.
Yep.
There was a question about Linux agents. We use mostly Linux agents. Found those to be pretty solid. I don't think I've seen it with the most recent version of the agent, but previously I did see a couple of times where we had to restart the service using system control. So I just basically created a cron job that restarted the service every 12 hours and had never saw any problems after that.
Yeah, I like Shiva's idea though of actually, like, you know, having his app kind of watch for stuff, you know, almost a watchdog of sorts.
Mhm.
Like that sounds like a good implementation, Shiva. I like that idea of if that can help. Something else, you know, while you're talking about Linux, I haven't seen any of my Linux agents update. They're still all stuck at, like, you know, various older versions. Is that something that I have to force, or
No,
would I expect?
ours are all updating.
Okay, lucky. Yeah, that's something I haven't seen. Cool.
It's all that great security you got in place. Come on now.
Yeah.
Tim, if you're looking at Sophos APIs, we'll be happy to basically kind of get in and help out with whatever is needed to make this happen, because this is basically a big problem. Getting there, getting our fingerprints in there is basically one of our biggest issues.
Yeah, planning to do that sometime in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, we're interested in digging into those.
All right. Just gonna go back here. A lot of comments. Bear with me, Shiva and everybody. Okay. So is it Mercia? Did I pronounce it right? Or if I didn't, I apologize. Question, Shiva, is it possible to generate reports for a subset of assets only? Let's say based on tags, scenarios, like vols used, staging and performance, security checks, etc., before we go into production?
Right now, basically, we haven't given that, but basically, we've been working on it, and I think I'll have Divin come into the next call and actually demonstrate how this will be done. So once we get this thing go ahead on that, we will essentially roll that out.
Okay. Elan asks, can we leverage CyberCNS to reveal UEFI vulnerabilities to examine and patch BIOS with or without OEM update manager?
We do basically report on, I think, Dell and HP UEFI vulnerabilities. We are basically working on Lenovo also, but patching, we have not yet done that because with UEFI patching, especially BIOS patching, is a little sensitive. But if this group here feels that we should work on that, we are happy to basically put that together, because again, we'll have to basically use either Dell's Open Manage or HP's this thing to essentially do the upgrades. So we'll call their APIs to essentially do the upgrades. But if the team here thinks that is basically valuable, we'll absolutely take that up and put it in the next couple of sprints.
Good. Okay, Wayne asks, we are having difficulty with Cisco/VMware CDE identification. It does identify the version of the device, but not the CDEs associated with the version. Is there some other configuration on the Cisco VM device to get this information, or is it internal change in CyberCNS that needs to happen?
As long as we are able to kind of read the system description and the system sys-object ID, these are the two fields we essentially use to kind of lock down the device type and basically the software version. We should be able to get this on any of the Cisco devices. And again, with VMware, we are again looking at the same set of fields to figure this out. If you are not getting the required vulnerabilities, basically, I think I already saw your ticket come in yesterday or day for yesterday. I am basically going to, because it was escalated to me. So I'm going to—
Wendy, I'm on a call.
You can mute Johan again. Super.
Oh, sorry, guys.
He's on a call.
Sorry.
Yeah, we don't want to interrupt Johan's call. I'm joking with Johan, by the way. I hope you're okay with me joking around. Go ahead, Shiva.
Yeah, so I've seen the ticket come through. So basically, I'll just verify that. And basically, in the next day or two, you'll basically receive an update as to why you're not seeing those vulnerabilities. And if it is something on our side, you'll basically see a patch pushed to your system.
Okay. Elaine asks, so do you folks use, so what do you folks use to check and patch BIOS? I don't see CW Automate having this facility. And can we expect, oh, then he asked the UEIF again.
Yeah, so we do basically pull up UEFI vulnerabilities, but we don't patch them at this point of time. And one of the reasons for why we basically are not really going after that is because of what Tim had pointed out. Like, we find that especially in the UEFI BIOS, like when people release the patches, like it basically makes machines unbootable. So if people forget to take a backup, then basically we get into a lot of problematic situations.
Okay, what Linux distro is supported, Shiva? Centros 5, is it supported?
6,
what about
7, and 8.
Okay. Oh, Tim already asked. Yeah, Tim answered. Sorry. All right. Yeah, watch. Tim's answering that. Bear with me. Is it possible to check for outdated firmware, printers, network devices, IPMI, etc.?
Yes, it's already there. So I'll just get a report for it. I just think that basically we don't have a report to show you the outdated firmware. We have the data in there. You can pull it through Elastic out, but I'll basically create a report and send it out, and also basically put an Elasticsearch dashboard.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this, show. I'm going to take a leap of faith, but come behind me here. Elan asked, do we reveal compromised firmware? We're not a threat detection tool. We're an identify tool. Fair, Shiva?
Yep.
Okay, Garrett, is there a question in there? Garrett?
No, just feedback. I think just for some food for thought for everybody trying to think about system firmware upgrades and trying to figure out what value there might be in that. And, the big question is, are you going to detect and determine a risk based upon that machine, that asset? But if you are, how are you going to get that data? Where is that data going to come from? How are you going to engineer that? But then as everyone's mentioning about patching, well, if you try to patch firmware and you're going to hook into, Image Assistant or Support Assistant for HP, Open Manage for Dell, things like that, there's a lot of risk doing that. Now, having that ability is great, but it would take a lot of coordination by the partner with that customer, to do that process. Because imagine doing BIOS firmware pushes and, on 100 or 500 machines, and then having that go amok. That could be, hell for about a week or two.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think probably in maybe 2 or 3 years, that will stabilize and we'll be able to actually have a patching mechanism that we can trust from the
Yeah.
manufacturers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of value in just identifying vulnerabilities, but trying to patch them at that level is a dangerous road.
It's easy to want a tool to do everything. I just, I'm a believer in keep making this thing awesome in terms of what the scope was. Like, I think we still have some, and Shiv, I think you'd be agree, like, if we could, once we, get these core fundamentals down that Shiv is releasing now, I think, getting into back to like things we wanted to do on the external scan. I know Carl, if you're still on, you were a big fan of that. So
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is always tough to figure out exactly where the product fits, specifically back to the, detecting BIOS things and making changes. I just, perhaps maybe on detection, I certainly wouldn't want anything to automate a BIOS patch. For whatever reason, maybe it's I'm old school, but rolling that stuff out seems like not something I'm wanting to automate like that. I typically only do such things, as a practice when an identified issue seems to require it. That's just the approach to like a BIOS upgrade on a desktop, I suppose sometimes there are vulnerabilities where you need to do it en masse, but that's not really been my experience. So.
Yeah, I love what you said, David. Identify, you can't fix it, you can't see it, right? Back to the basics. So
Yeah, I would rather see resources going into really building better functionality around the core part of the product, which would be, again, I think the external scans maybe could still use some work.
Yep.
I'd rather see resources going into that than diving down into a very risky area like BIOS. Again, I agree with Carl. That's the sort of thing where you don't start touching that unless you have a reason to do it. Generally, unless there's been a significant vulnerability published, or something's not working properly, or there's been another identified risk. Not something you want to automate.
Dennis, actually, anybody on this team, I have a huge favor to ask. Is there an example of an excellent external scan report that anybody has seen, which we can use as a reference? Because we do a lot of external scans using Qualys, etc., on various machines that we have, but we basically get the same information that we have. But I know for sure that everybody is kind of longing for a proper external scan report, which essentially has a ton of data, which basically probably we are not presenting, or etc. Because when we look at the ones that we are getting back, we are basically getting the same information as what we are collecting. So my only request is, if anybody can essentially kind of give me an example of an external scan report that essentially works with that you've seen work on an asset and give you kind of the information that is very good. If you want to basically remove the IP address, etc., it's okay. But the kind of information it gives is basically what I would like to get from any of you.
So CISA actually does free scanning for people. Their report is really well put together, very readable. I'd look at that as one that is meant for human consumption. So it's well put together.
Yeah, we have some clients that we run Qualys on several hundred IP addresses for, like every month. I could probably, do a side-by-side report, like, to give you, one thing about those big reports is we download them as HTML reports, so you can sort of expand and collapse. Because if you print those off as PDF reports, they end up being tens of thousands of pages. There's just a massive amount of data in there, most of which nobody ever reads or cares about, but I guess it sort of needs to be there. So I find that the HTML reports where you can expand and collapse, the report is really the only way you can read them. So I think I can send you a couple examples of some we do that are, I said we do them for, maybe between 500 and 800 IP addresses on a monthly basis for some clients.
Thank you so much, Dennis, because I think that's the one area where, one area that I think we are extremely weak on is this external scan piece. And the second is in the reporting, especially for the compliance, which we are now fixing up. But I think the external scan is something that I want, it's a little like we left it open for too long. And I want an example of what we need to strive to become so that we can essentially quickly put resources on it and get that out there.
The thing about the Qualys reports is they contain such a massive amount of data, but the value to that is being able to focus in on one, if you have a particular IP address, like, well, why does this vulnerability show? So being able to drill down into some detail that's 2 or 3 layers deep. And the only way you can do that really is with some kind of an expanding and collapsing report, because otherwise, even searching it in a PDF is extremely tedious.
No, that's perfect, Dennis, because I think, as you said, basically being able to create reports which are consumable and basically not just printable or basically sendable, but basically something that you can look at and explain to a customer is important. So if we get some formats, basically, then we'll also get some ideas in terms of what information and how deep should we go with the information.
Yeah, one of the things that we can, because Qualys says it has a very robust reporting platform. You can create custom reports and they're very, very flexible. But one of the things that helps us a lot is being able to create a report that's sorted by vulnerability. And again, this is for clients that have a large number of IP addresses. So it's sorted by vulnerability. And then you can drill down to the individual IP addresses that are affected, or you can do it by IP address. So I'll send you a couple of different reports that we pull out of Qualys.
Perfect. Thanks, James.
All right. Let's see. To wrap up here, last question, I'll go with I think it's Sean Murphy, S. Murphy. Can it be configured to spawn the patch application so we're sure all patches apply?
I will work on that, Sean. I'll basically see if that can be done, then we'll basically put it as part of the workflow.
Awesome. All right, survey, will we be on for next week?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Well, you guys have a wonderful week ahead, wonderful weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you all this time on Wednesday. Make it a great day, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.